Welcome back
to Apologetically Inclined.
That was kind of weird. Connor, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. What about you?
You liking your new haircut?
No.
Wait, seriously?
Short?
I just need to wash it. It'll turn out better later.
Are you planning on making it curly?
Well, I'm trying out haircuts for my wedding.
Ooh.
So.
Fancy.
Yeah, that's in April, guys.
Oh, yeah.
We're coming up on that date.
Coming up quick.
I feel like it was like just last week we were talking about Connor supposedly getting a yes from Nat.
Yeah. Well, that was what? Our second episode?
That was the first Fruit of the Spirit episode.
First Fruit of the Spirit.
Love.
Okay.
Because that weekend you were going to go out and
How
actually...
many weeks ago was that?
Yeah.
1, 2,
That was many
3,
We're on 7, so
4,
6 weeks
5.
ago?
Yeah, but I think we
Oh,
skipped
no,
we skipped a
we've-
few
we've
weeks,
had-
so it's
Oh,
been
yeah.
over 2 months.
I forgot about those.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We've actually been engaged about as long as we were dating.
Wow.
So there's that.
I've had a long train ride.
Oh, yeah, you're on what, month like 37?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Seth feels me too.
Well, he's on month like 9,
10,
10.
going on 11. But yeah, hopefully it's very, very soon from now, or just very soon to now. 2 is the word I'm looking for.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it kind of tying into this whole introductory conversation. Connor is actually going to be talking more about like the faithfulness between a man and a woman in marriage. So
Mhm.
that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, Malachi, do you want to kick us off with how God is faithful even when we aren't?
First off, though,
First.
we'd like to say that we are going over the fruits of the spirits.
Yes.
And
Oh.
Yeah, we actually
Yeah.
completely forgot about
Yeah.
that whole part.
All right.
We got sidetracked.
So we're going over the fruits of the Spirit, and today we're going over faithfulness. Malachi is going to be talking about how God is faithful even when we aren't, and Seth is going to be talking about the faithfulness of us to God and His plan, and then I will be, like Malachi mentioned, talking about faithfulness in marriage. I'm going to go ahead and read you guys the memory verse that we would like you guys to go ahead and memorize as we're going through this series. It's Galatians 5:23 through 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Malachi, would you like to now kick us off with God is faithful even when we aren't?
Sure, Connor.
Okay.
Sure.
thank you for establishing
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Oh, man, where do I start? Man, there are so many things about God that are, like, really difficult for us to grasp. Like, things such as the Trinity, His eternality, and His, like, ability to create from nothing.
Yeah.
Even our best scientists can't even create a grain of sand from nothing. Like, think about how small a grain of sand is. They can't make it. But God made all of the universe
Mm-hmm.
just by speaking.
Yeah.
That's magnificent. And really, all those things are difficult for our mind to comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
But rather, the other faithfulness of God is something that our hearts have a hard time dealing with, because we as humans in our fallen, sinful nature don't really lean towards that type of faithfulness. We usually hold grudges. We break promises easily. So it's more of a matter of our heart not being able to understand it rather than our head. And something that Connor is going to touch on later.
Heresy.
Something that Christ... Oh, I did it again. Man,
You got
something that Connor is going to touch on later is Christ's love for us is likened to a husband and a wife.
There you go.
I'm going to read a verse from Ephesians 5. It says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her." Like, the covenant of a marriage is something fashioned after the covenant we should have with God, an unconditional love with unbreakable faith, where God forgives all of our wrongdoings because He already paid the price for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share 2 pretty good depictions of God's faithfulness. The first one is in the book of Judges. Like, the people of God are like constantly turning away from him and following after other gods, disgracing his name. But God always remains faithful to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is in 1 Samuel 8, where Israel is wanting an earthly king to rule and judge over them like all the other nations, because they want a king that's actually visible. They want a real king that the other nations can see. And God actually tells Samuel to not be disheartened, because they're not rejecting him, they're rejecting God. But what makes this an incredible act of God's faithfulness is because Israel wanted an earthly king to get away from the invisible king that God was. So God sends his son in the likeness of human flesh to become that earthly king to rule and judge over them.
Mm-hmm.
Colossians 1:15 says, Jesus is the image of the invisible God. God sent his son as a human to be the invisible nature of the invisible God. That is, what?
So the invisible nature of the invisible
I meant
God.
the visible nature of the invisible God that Israel didn't want. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jesus, like, over and over and over again, daily represents the Lord's faithfulness to us, because Jesus died on that cross for us, and so in that sense we are saved as believers, but we are also being saved and being sanctified through our lives. And he consistently shows his faithfulness to us, because we over and over and over again continue to mess up, even though our sins have been forgiven. And over again, Jesus shows his faithfulness and consistently forgives us of our sins every single time.
Yeah, and it's constantly us too. That's not faithful to God.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's always going to be there for us.
Yeah.
We're the ones who turn our backs from him.
Mm-hmm. So we could totally look at the Old Testament and all of God's faithfulness there, but there's the same faithfulness now that we get to observe and we get to feel on the daily basis. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning sometimes. I'm like, no, like, the Lord is there. He is faithful with me. I can continue to keep going. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, especially when, like, we don't know what's going to happen in that day,
Mm-hmm.
either just in our day or, like, the world around us. And so, like, our faithful allegiance to God is the only thing that we can really count on. Like, he is our hope in a fallen world.
Yeah.
His provision and forgiveness and salvation. You know, like, it's the greatest benefit of all if we're faithful believers.
Yeah, I think it's really important to think of God's faithfulness not just to us, but also to his nature. Because if God isn't faithful to his nature, then we wouldn't necessarily be able to trust him if he was not consistent with his own nature. So him being consistent with his own nature gives us that trust and reliability in him, in where we can say, oh, no, God is going to be the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and forever and ever. He's never going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And we can put our faith in that.
Yeah, I think it can be easy for believers to be. It happens often where believers will end up in a sort of, it'll feel kind of like a valley in their faith. Like they won't see very much fruit, or they just don't quite feel the presence of God in their life like they used to.
The shadow of death there.
Yeah, but that's a really good reminder to consistently remind ourselves of that. Just because we are going through a different season in our life than we might have in the past, it definitely does not mean that God has changed. He hasn't changed his affections towards you. His affections remain the same. And that's just a really important thing for the Christian to remember in the everyday life, especially when you're living a really busy life and it's really hard to get to a lot of things. Just to remember that Jesus hasn't changed his affections for you. They are still there, and he is still waiting there to give you that big hug when you come back.
Yeah, I'm definitely in one of those points where, like, I have so much going on that I kind of lose sight of it
Mm-hmm.
way more often than I would even want.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to lose sight of it in the first place.
Yeah.
But like, it is good to know that I can come home or really anywhere. I can go anywhere
Mm-hmm.
and take 5-10 minutes on my day and either open up a Bible app on my phone or grab my physical Bibles and
Mhm.
go somewhere and just read the word and dwell in that.
Yeah.
And so
Kind of rest in the fact that he's faithful.
Yeah. Which I think is the hardest thing for humans, because we don't again, like I said earlier, we lose that faithfulness to God, or we get pulled away from it.
Yeah.
And so I think Job was a really good view of that entire book, because all his earthly possessions were taken away, his wife, his kids, and
You sound really, really tired.
dude, I'm so tired.
He just worked a lot. Yeah, Seth got up at 4 this morning to work, so props to him.
Yeah. I decided not to have more than 4 shots.
Oh my god.
Good job. You're lowering it from 12.
10.
That's much better.
Yeah. It's also why my brain is going all
2 miles an
fuzzy-
hour.
Fuzzy and yeah.
I love being excited about reading Job.
Oh man. Come on, pep it up, Seth. Get that joy in
We
here.
don't want our listeners to be falling asleep as they listen to you talk, because you have a very soothing voice.
You do. It's very soothing. And
Okay,
that
this
beautiful
is
beard.
a really weird conversation.
It is. Let's get focused.
Yeah.
All right, you were talking about
bring
Job.
my Dutch Bros vibe in.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys, welcome back. Anyways. Yeah, and so he lost all these things, and he still looked to God before all of that. It's
Mhm.
who are we to deny God's plan? He's gonna come back to us more so, not so that he makes us feel good, but so that it goes according to his plan and what he has designed for our lives, and so that it'll honor and glorify him.
Yeah.
And so we know that the plan that God has is more focused on expanding his heavenly kingdom rather than just the things we have on this earth. After all, we were created to have a personal relationship with our Heavenly Father.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. I think, quick side note too, another great depiction of utter faithfulness to God's plan is Abraham and Isaac with the offering. So
Yeah.
Abraham brought Isaac up to the stone table, and Isaac's like, "Where's the offering, bro?" thought we were doing an offering to God. And Abraham's like, "God will provide the offering." And then he puts Isaac up there, and Isaac's like, "Oh." But Abraham was so faithful
see
to
how
the
it is.
end. He's like, "Okay, either God is just not going to make me kill Isaac, or he is, but he's going to bring him back from the dead." Abraham had an incredible faith in God. Okay, another quick side note. Faith does not equal faithfulness. Those are two different things.
Yes.
So, just want to add that. But that's another good depiction of just good faithfulness in God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring them up, because I was just about to bring up him and Sarah.
Mm.
Especially when Sarah wasn't able to bear a child, and so she looked
Yeah.
to Hagar, their maid, to give birth to their son. And so there's a lot of pain to that. You know that you can't bear a child, which is in itself such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so it had them look back to God, and it was God who provided in the end that made Sarah pregnant.
Yeah.
Let's look at how in a circumstance that we as humans lose a lot of our faith and that outlook. We are met with the love of God. It's us that has to look back at God and submit ourselves before Him.
Mm-hmm.
In which, in the case of Abraham and Sarah, I think it's such a beautiful look at how a marriage should be. Husband and wife, even if you can't have children, it's by God's design that husband and wife are created for each other.
Yeah. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. It's supposed to be what the wife looks at when trying to figure out what her biblical role is in a marriage. I'll touch on that a little bit more later, but first I want to go to I want to read a little passage from Hosea 1:2. It says, "When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, 'Go, take to yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry, for the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord.'" Harlotry, if you don't know what that is it's similar to prostitution. It's like whoredom, throwing your body around like it's a currency type thing. Hosea is a prophet of the Lord. And Hosea, being a prophet of the Lord, was called to marry and be faithful to an unfaithful woman. Reading through Hosea, you're going like, what? Like, Hosea is still being faithful to this woman, and she eventually, like, there's conflict, but Hosea is still faithful to, I forgot her name. Anyway, Hosea is still faithful to his harlot wife, and Gomer, right? Yeah. But this is a perfect symbol of God's grace, God's faithfulness, and it's eventually a symbol and it is a foreshadowing for Christ's marriage to the church.
Yeah.
Because we as Christians and just the church in general are flawed and we are sinful. I mean, I can't imagine what, like, looking down on the church in general, like, I would liken it probably to like a smoker's lung compared to a fresh lung. Like, I mean, that's how I always think of it. That's a really, really weird comparison.
I was not expecting you to go there.
But I mean, like, a smoker's lung it does the function of a lung, except it's like there's like black spots all over it, and there's plagues and all. Like, it looks like a plague has taken over the lung, like an infection.
Yeah.
And sin is like that in the church. Sin is like a cancer. The church still functions as the church, but not as well as it's designed to. But Christ is still faithful, just like how we are basically the harlot in this story.
Yeah, I mean, even God says to his people in the Old Testament that the people of Israel went whoring after other gods.
Exactly.
And that's exactly...
And we have not changed from the people of Israel. We still have that tendency. However, we also have the salvation we have the assurance of our salvation in Christ.
Yeah.
This is something that kind of like unfaithfulness in general between a husband and wife in the aspect of sexual relations tends to be one of the biggest reasons for divorce. Someone says, either I'm just not happy with them, and then they go and cheat, or they're like, oh, my husband went and then cheated on this woman. Now I'm gonna divorce this person. This is the biggest reason, or not the biggest, but one of the biggest reasons for divorce in America. Now, divorce is biblically allowed on the grounds of sexual immorality, but from what I've gathered, and we can go into this whole topic eventually later if this is something that you guys want, but from what I have gathered and in conversations with other leaders in the church, it is best to stay together even through this. Now, there is a point where it may be better to just divorce. I'm not saying it would be best for everyone, but generally it would be best to stay together because it is your first wife. It is your true wife. I'm not going to go into and very much more into depth on that one because I don't have enough to talk about for that. But kind of looking back, faithfulness isn't just about being sexually devoted to your wife. It is heavily that. That's generally what we talk about when talking about being faithful to your husband and wife. But it's much, much deeper than that. Ephesians 5:25-26 says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word." Just like how Christ has this unimaginable, incredible, almost ungraspable faithfulness towards us in the church, that also applies to how a husband should act towards his wife.
Yeah.
We, as husbands, we are to forgive our wives' wrongdoings instantly. We keep no record of our wives' wrongdoings. We believe all things our wives say to us, and we endure all things our wives throw at us, just like Christ does for the church each and every single moment. If we can consider Christ consistently renewing his promise, consistently reminding us of his promise and keeping it, his faithfulness, then we must also consider these things also being faithful to your wife. What Christ did for us in his death and resurrection created something called a covenant. It's a deeper type of promise between two or more parties. A little bit of background on the word covenant. It's often compared to a blood pact. The root of the Hebrew word for it actually means to cut. Biblical covenants were often made in the sight of the Lord or even with the Lord himself. So it's this really heavy promise. And like Malachi mentioned, marriage is one of these covenants and should be fought for, prayed for, and treated as such. You're not just being faithful to the promise you made to your wife, you're also being faithful to the promise you made to the Lord together. Yeah. There's another element to it on top of just the covenantal element, though. Marriage itself is put together by the Lord, biblical marriage, and it's evident in what Jesus says in Matthew 19:6. It says, "So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate." Because marriage is a covenant between man and woman and God, as well as being put together by the Lord, husband and wives have no choice than to obey the beautiful commandment of staying faithful to their one spouse. And that's the only thing I'd rather do anyway. But It will be hard. There will be times where on these grounds I am unfaithful to her, being selfish to her in ways Christ isn't to the church. And in those times, as husbands, we have to forgive. On the basis of wives, because we've been talking mainly about husbands, being faithful till the end it's pretty much the exact same. But roles are a little bit different in this regard. These roles are kind of swapped in that wives are to enact the role of the church in relation to Jesus Christ. So husbands are supposed to enact the role of Christ to the church or be an example of it. Wives are supposed to be an example of the church to Christ. So just like the church does to Christ, Ephesians 5:22 says, "Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord." That's a massive call, and often it seems to be considered kind of a sexist thing. Modern day women and feminists in general, in the church and not, see this and go, "Oh, this is kind of offensive."
Yeah.
Because they don't know what it's actually saying. Looking at it face level, I would agree it would be kind of insensitive, kind of, like I said, offensive. But the call is still made. It's incredibly important, knowing the sensitive nature of this topic, to understand that the husband and wife are still equal biblically.
Yeah.
We have to compare it to the relationship to that of Jesus and the Father. John 5:19 shows us that Jesus submits to the Father, and John 10:30 makes it clear that Jesus and the Father are equal. This is not an unequal, oppressive, or sexist relationship. The roles are actually incredibly beautiful and unique, and are divinely orchestrated roles of which to exercise their faithfulness and love towards one another and ultimately glorify the Lord. The wife's submission to her husband will not be without distress. Jesus even faced distress in facing death on the cross, something that the Father commanded him and led him to do. And just as Jesus followed the leadership of the Father through his distress, the wife is to do the same. That's kind of a really hard thing to grasp. So someone could come up with the question of, okay, well, what if my husband is asking me to do something sinful? In that case, you do as a wife whatever honors the Lord. If it does not honor the Lord to do what your husband is commanding you to do, you do not do that. You do what honors the Lord. In that case, honoring the Lord and resisting what your husband is saying is much better than to just follow what your husband is saying altogether. It really is a beautiful, beautiful thing, the fact that husbands and wives have different roles. The husband can't submit in the same way that a wife can submit, and the wife can't play that headship role in the same way a husband can submit. You have to have both to have a healthy marriage. And so to think that, it's wrong for the wife to submit would simply just be foolish, because that's how it was designed. All around, this is all about faithfulness. Faithfulness within a marriage is a huge call with many parts and layers. You'll go through hardship and you'll go through distress, but you'll also see so much beauty in it. And ultimately, it's all to the absolute glory of God.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of us being created. It's to have that relationship and be, ultimately focused on him throughout whatever it is that we have to face. Which God is by our side in that the entire time.
That is pretty much all that we have for today.
Yeah.
Simple, quick episode on faithfulness. Well, I think it's quick. I really have no idea.
Yeah, but no, that's we had some good time with this one. So, yeah, but that's all we have going on for today.
That's all for the
That is all.
the teaching portion. Mostly Seth is. Quit slapping your head, bro. Wake up. Seth is exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm pretty tired too.
Yep.
Connor, you look weird. But
I think I'm gonna go get some coffee after this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not exactly interested in falling asleep at 4:00.
Well, you've already been up for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
We have 2 more Fruit of the Spirit episodes. We have gentleness and self-control, and then after that, we
get into
stuff.
daily things.
Yeah,
We're just
that doesn't mean daily uploads. Sadly, that would be pretty cool. But
No.
that would
No.
Seth doesn't want to do that.
We do not have the time for that.
Still once a week.
Yeah.
But more into like daily application things and like deep theology stuff, hopefully. And let's just start doing some actual apologetic stuff.
Yeah.
We're called apologetically inclined, so
Yeah.
should be inclined to.
Apologize. Just kidding. Well, apologize our faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a weird word.
Yep.
Anyways, I will be hopefully receiving a box of hats this Wednesday. So by the time this episode is out, it'll be 2 days until I receive some hats. And there will be, we will get 3. And there will be 9 for you guys to purchase if you would like one. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, just DM us if you want one.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all we have for you guys today. We hope that you guys have enjoyed this, and we hope that it affects you a little bit for the rest of your week and maybe past that. And we just hope that you tune in again next time. See you guys.